Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it depends on what side of the planet you're on, or the U.S. But good evening here. Nice to see everyone. While we're jumping in and getting ready, and people are hopping on, just drop me a comment in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. Like what city and state. I'm always curious where folks are from. And we got a good one today. I'm really, really, really excited about talking about this topic. It's one of the most common questions that I get. It's one of the most common questions in the comment sections that I get is like, hey, how do I decide on the right franchise? How do I choose the right one? What's up, Dallas? Good to see you, man. Um, it's such a popular question, and so yeah, I really want to dive into that tonight on how you can choose and decide on the right franchise. Because here's the problem. Here's what happens, and I know a lot of you guys are going to wind up catching the replay. Grateful to the folks that are on live with us right now. If you're watching the replay, then drop in the chat replay. And wherever you're watching on, if you can click the thumbs up button, that would be great. I'm going to drop you a bunch of free value nuggets, all the good stuff, completely free, no strings attached. All I ask is that you just hit the like button and drop some comments. It helps all the algorithms that we're streaming to show the video to more people. So I appreciate it. But here's the problem on the topic of deciding on the right franchise is that there are over 4,000 franchises in the United States alone. 4,000. And so what happens is, and what we hear from folks all the time, maybe you can relate, is that trying to find the right franchise, it's overwhelming. You're looking on all the franchise websites, scouring the internet, looking at the entrepreneur top whatever list, and the more you look, the more confused you get. Does that resonate with anyone? Like the more you look at different franchises, the more you get confused, and you're like, "Oh, this is geez, which one's the right one for me?" And then a common thing that comes up in trying to choose the right franchise is how much money can I make? How much money can I actually make with the franchise? And comparing franchises apples to apples feels so difficult. It's so confusing. Like, why is there just not a clear way to understand how much money I can make? Does any of this resonate so far? And as we're diving in, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what has been your experience or challenge in trying to find the right franchise? Is it just you're still trying to figure out a franchising for you? Is it that it's overwhelming? Is it that you just having a hard time narrowing it down? Like, let me know whether you're watching live or in the replay, like what your challenge is in the process in finding the right franchise. So here's what happens. Folks either try to do it by themselves, and you're looking on all those lists that I referenced before, the top entrepreneur franchise list, all those things, which are not representative of actually the good franchises that you should likely buy or invest in. They just usually are the biggest names that have the most locations. So you'll see things like KFC and Taco Bell and McDonald's and 7-Eleven and all those brands that you would probably never actually buy. And there are so many other industries that are really good. And so what happens is you start looking on these websites, you start looking at franchises, you start spinning your wheels, getting confused, and then either getting so overwhelmed that you do nothing, right? Or you just get frustrated and then kind of give up, and then maybe the process takes like a year or 2 years or 3 years, right? Anyone relate to this yet? If so, and the folks that are tuning in, welcome, welcome. We're talking about how to find the right franchise. And so drop me in the comments. I'd love to know, like, what's been your challenge in finding the right franchise? What has been your challenge? Too many options, overwhelming, just don't really know where to look. What is it? So here's the thing that I want to dive into. So how do you find the right franchise with confidence? So we're going to dive in now. We're going to get in the meat and potatoes. You got a pen and paper. You got Word or Google Drive, Google Doc up. Pick something to take some notes, because when you take notes and actively participate, you have a much higher retention rate of actually retaining the information. So the first step in finding good franchises, finding the best ones to pick the right one for you is that number one, you have to have a proven process on how to actually buy a franchise and how to find the good ones. As an example, here's the analogy that we'll use is if you've ever bought a house before. Any of you ever bought a house before? If you ever bought a house before, do you just randomly start driving around ringing people's doorbells looking for sale signs? Probably not. So what's the proven process when buying a house? Well, the proven process when buying a house is typically you would reach out to a real estate agent. The real estate agent would ask you questions, and the first thing they would want to know is what is your criteria? Like, what is your specific criteria? I want a house with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I want it to be in this general neighborhood, or we like a couple of different neighborhoods, and we want to have a backyard. We might want to have a pool. And so you need to figure out first, you got to get clear. What are your must haves in a franchise and what are your nice to haves in a franchise? And we're going to dive into more of the meat and potatoes of this. And I'm going to give you some prompts that you can actually do right now so that you can make some progress, right? And as you guys are watching this, and you feel like, hey, yeah, as I'm going through this, I'd really like to get some help and bounce these ideas off of someone. Then I'm going to drop this little banner. You can schedule a free strategy call with our team, and that way they can just help talk you through or point you in the right direction on some resources. But so the first thing you're going to do is get as clear as possible on your outcome and utilize a proven process. So as an example, what are some of the industries that are a no, right? So the easiest thing in finding a franchise is to first start eliminating the ones that you definitely do not want to do. So what you do is you start eliminating the industries that are a definite no-go for you. Like, I have zero interest in this industry. There's no chance in hell that I'm going to do that industry. And then you start rating the industries that you're like, wow, those are a 5 for me. So one of the things we have our clients do in our Zero to Profitable franchise system is we have an industry list and we provide the spreadsheet for them. And one of the first things that we do with them is rating on on a scale of 1 to 5 those industries. So if something's a 5, those standouts right away, that already allows you to eliminate literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different options immediately just by starting to rate industries. The second thing you're going to do is get clarity on the geographic area that you want to be in for your franchise, right? Because if one of the reasons why you want to buy a franchise is because you don't want to commute anymore and you want to be close to home, then one of your criteria in finding a franchise would be that it has to have your territory available. There has to be a location available in your area that you can plant your flag with your franchise. And what will happen is there are a lot of franchises that your territory will not be available. So you want to get clear on the industries that you are a no, the industries that are a definite yes, and what is the geographic area that you want to be located in with your franchise. The next thing you want to do is identify, would you prefer a franchise that has a storefront, or would you prefer a franchise that has no location? Maybe a service-based franchise, right? And so you may not know all of the answers to these questions and criteria that I'm stating right now, but what you're going to do is you're going to get as clear as possible on the things that you do know. Because what will happen is as you get, let's say out of this list of about 8 pieces of criteria. Let's say you're only really clear on about 4 of them. The other 4 are kind of a toss-up. Here's what will happen. Your 4 points of clarity that you have will help you narrow down your initial narrowing down. And then as you start looking at specific franchise concepts, then you're going to gain even more clarity, and you will likely start gaining clarity on those other points that we're going to talk about. And so as you move through the process and move through a proven process, right? You're not just winging it, randomly looking at franchise websites and entrepreneur lists and just thinking, oh, that looks like a good franchise. That's ranked number 7 on the franchise list. That's a terrible way to buy a franchise. It's a terrible way to do it, right? So don't do it, because it's a quick way to end up buying a franchise or business that you hate and that you're absolutely miserable with because it was just ranked on some random list. And there's actually things that are a bit of fit. So you want to figure out, hey, do I want an actual storefront, or I don't want to sign a lease. I don't want to do a build out. I want to have a service-based location. One way to know this and figure out if this is a part of your criteria is, how soon do you want to be open? So as an example, if you want to open a physical location and that's your dream, like we had a guy, ironically, his name is Tarek, who came through our Zero to Profitable franchise system. He actually bought a resale franchise that was able to replace his income immediately, and he was able to leave his job. But his dream for a long time, he said, I want to have my own physical business. I've always dreamed of having a storefront. And so he bought a franchise that had a storefront. But if you're buying, let's say, a new franchise, you sign your franchise agreement, it's probably going to be 9 to 12 months before you're actually open for business. And so some of the folks that come into our Zero to Profitable franchise system, they say, hey, like, I want to be open in the next 90 days. I want to be open ASAP. If that's the case, that might be one of your criteria points where now you're looking at service-based franchises, maybe home services, could be financial services. There are all sorts of franchises that are service-based where you don't have to, you can literally sign your franchise agreement and be up and running within, a couple of weeks. So that's one point that you need to get clear on. And what can help to, this leads into the next one, what can steer that decision is your budget and your financial resources. So in order to find like a great franchise, well, it's not going to be that great of a franchise if you can't afford it, right? Or if it puts you in a dire financial situation because you're putting your entire life savings on the line, it's probably not a good franchise, right? Or at least a good franchise for you. Because there are a lot of good franchises. There are great franchises. But the question is it good for you, right? And as you guys are hopping on and coming in and out, I know we're doing live, so people are coming and going. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what some of your challenges are in finding the right franchise. We have Mo4. He said it's overwhelming and budget. Two common ones for sure. And so going back to the budget thing, well, if your budget is tight, right, and net worth is a challenge for you, then you're not going to go opening up a franchise that has their FDD says it's going to be $800,000 to build out. That's probably not going to be the way that you go. But there are some franchises that you can get up and running for less than 50 grand or close to it. We had one of our clients, Josh, he did a home inspection franchise. He already had a lot of the tools. He already had his own personal truck. He just had it wrapped. He was able to get up and running with that franchise for much less than $100,000. I don't know the exact amount of what it was, and he was up and running within a few weeks. So budget is super important. You need to get clear on that, right? Very, very clear on that. What sort of access to capital do you have? A lot of the times with an SBA loan, if that's how you're going to fund it, you need to put 20% down to get your SBA loan. Now, a lot of the way that people get the 20% down is through something like Rob's, using their retirement account, or through an investment account, or so on and so forth. We'll do a whole nother, if you guys want a live training, you want me to walk through funding and exactly how to get funded, all the different funding methods, and maybe some case studies of how some of our clients have gotten funded, then let me know in the comments. And if we get enough comments saying, yeah, we'd love to hear a live on funding, then I'll do one. I'll schedule one on funding and walk you guys through exactly how to fund franchises. Another criteria to establish when you're picking the right franchise is, like, when do you want to be open? This is one of the things that I didn't really put a lot of thought into before we had bought into our franchises, was that we would be open 363 days a year. And oftentimes we were open for 12, 14 hours a day. There's a lot of things that means you have more opportunity to make money, but a lot of things can go wrong too. And you have to have the labor to be able to staff up for that many days and that many hours. And so some of you may go, you know what? I'm working weekends at my job now. I'm trying to get out of having to work weekends. Actually, I just had a call with a gentleman where that was the case. He said he works in the entertainment business. He lives in like the LA area. And he's like, man, I have a family, I have kids. I've pretty much worked weekends for the last 15 years. I don't want to work weekends anymore. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, there are franchises that are only Monday through Friday franchises. And so if that's an important point of your criteria, then you don't look at or engage in any of the other ones because you set that as your firm criteria. Just like if you're buying a house and you're like, hey, I have a family, we need four bedrooms, and you see a house that you love. It's just like it's in a great neighborhood. They have a pool, they have everything else, but they only have 2 bedrooms. Are you going to buy the house? Rhetorical question. Probably not, because it doesn't meet one of your most important criteria. So for those of you who are just jumping on, I'm talking about the different criterias in first choosing a franchise, because that's the first step. You have to get clear on the end destination and what your must-haves, your need to haves, and your nice to haves are when choosing a franchise. So that's step number one, right? That's step number one. Mo4, thank you. He said, I would love to hear more about funding. Um, and so that's the first thing, right? You got to get clear on what you want in a franchise. The next thing is that it needs to align with what I call the profitable franchise formula. This is a proprietary methodology that I created, but there's essentially 4 things. I've made many trainings on this. So I've done many deep dive trainings on this. So if you want that training, let us know in the comments below, whether you're watching live or replay, and we can make sure to get you the link to get access to where I dive deep into the profitable franchise formula. But there are essentially 4 components. And so in order to pick the best franchise for you, you need to validate that they meet these 4 components. Are you ready? Taking notes? You ready? Okay. The first one is belief. So number 1, you need to have a strong belief in the business. Some people get confused and think, oh, I need to do a business that I'm passionate about, which is just not true. You don't need to. Passion is fleeting. What you're passionate about today could be different a year from now. So passion is too weak of a point, but typically our beliefs don't change often. Our convictions, we usually hold on to those. So if you truly believe in a service and a product because it's doing amazing, and you believe in kids mathnasium, and so you buy into a franchise that is a child enrichment franchise. Maybe it's like one of a Mathnasium, or one of the, and this is not me endorsing Mathnasium at all, but there are similar franchise concepts like that, that if that's aligned with your belief, then you go after that. Here's a mistake that people make. You hear or think that a franchise makes a lot of money. You really don't have much interest in that franchise industry, product, service whatsoever, but you just get excited because you see dollar signs. That is another terrible way to buy franchise. Now, if you get sucked in by the financial potential first, and then you realize, oh yeah, I really like this business, I really believe in what they're doing, then great, then go that route. So number 1 is belief and profitable franchise formula. Number 2 is got to align with your skill sets, right? So in order for it to be the right franchise for you, if you're deeply introverted and you hate talking to people, well, do not buy a franchise that requires that you as the franchisee and owner are going to have to often deal with the public and interact with a lot of people. There are franchise concepts where you can be more behind the scenes, right? And I was just telling this to our clients in our weekly call that we do. I said one of the best ways to lower your risk when buying a franchise is to buy a franchise that is within an industry that you already have a bunch of experience. And so that's a very, very easy way to help to increase your likelihood of success if it has aligned interest. So as an example, one of the gentlemen that was on our weekly call for our clients in Zero to Profitable Franchise, he has been in the HVAC business and he knows a lot about HVAC companies. So he's looking at plumbing franchises because there's a lot of overlap in those sort of businesses, a similar service model, sales model, etc. And I said, hey, well, I would also look at HVAC franchises because that's right up your alley as well. And so that's right along his skill sets. He would fit perfectly in buying that franchise as opposed to people. You go to the nearest food place, you love their products, it looks like they're busy, and you're like, oh, we should buy that franchise because they're always busy. And we just love the way it tastes. Well, I get it. I understand. I've been down that path. What I've learned, it's a terrible way to buy a franchise. And if you're optimizing for I want to be successful and make money, then optimize for I want to be successful and make money and reduce my risk, not I want to buy a franchise of, the X, Y, and Z food place that we love the way the food tastes and they look busy. Reduce your risk, put yourself at the highest likelihood of success as possible. Number 3 in the profitable franchise formula is demand. So in order to choose the right franchise, it is critical, one of the most important ones, that you are able to confirm the market demand. What do I mean by that? You need to assess that there is demand in the marketplace for the product, service, whatever type of business that you're looking for. Because yes, there are areas where there are just too many competitors. Sure, you could have a shot at being successful, but as an example, if you have the dream of opening up a juice and smoothie franchise and there are 5 within a 2-mile radius, it's probably not a good idea to open up a juice and smoothie franchise in that area, at least in that area specifically. And your ability to assess demand, and the higher the demand is for your specific business, the more quickly you will be in the position to get profitable. It's why when we built out our first store, we got profitable in less than 2 months. There was a tremendous amount of demand, and I had assessed that demand pretty thoroughly prior to us opening. And that's why I felt so confident. Actually, our site, our location didn't meet a lot of the criteria of the franchisor. And I kind of twisted their arm and talked them into it but I did my research. I pulled up data, and these are some of the things, again, that we teach in our program and system. But I pulled all this different data to back it up and say, hey, this area is growing. There's no one in a 5-mile radius of us. And so I feel confident that this is going to be successful. And it was, and it worked. So demand, very important. Number 4 is profit potential. So you got to validate the profit potential of the business. There are many ways to do this, but validating the profit potential and seeing the numbers and seeing what a profit and loss statement or a pro forma could look like is absolutely key. Because a franchise can look sexy and the franchisor might sell you the dream and tell you it's all sunshine and rainbows, and you might just fall in absolute love with this franchise. But at the end of the day, you've got to know what the profit potential is behind the scenes. Because as my mom used to say, I'm not doing this for my health. You're starting a business to make money, to generate profits. You want to become a happy and profitable franchisee. It's very hard to be happy if you are not profitable. Okay. And so it's important to put together financial projections, to look at a pro forma, et cetera. You need to validate the profit potential. There's a variety of ways to do this. Again, we have free trainings on this stuff where I dive in deeper into all of this stuff. So if you want those free trainings, then you can just let us know in the comments below. And me or my team later on will go in and respond, and we'll make sure that you get the links to those trainings where I dive in more to the profitable franchise formula. All right. So then the other part is, are you going to do this alone or are you going to do this with help? So one of the first things that I talked about at the beginning of this training was using a proven process. And so to use the house buying analogy again, when you go to buy a house, do you go scouring the neighborhood and driving around for hours and hours on Saturdays and Sundays and on the evenings, trying to see if there's a sign in the yard of a house for sale? No, you call a realtor. You sit down with that realtor, you talk about what you want, you establish a game plan. They start looking at specific options that have met your criteria that you guys have walked through together. They do all of the legwork of scheduling and booking the showings for you. They help to take you to the showing, show you around the house, do research on the neighborhood. They walk you through the process, right? And so the question is, as you go to find your franchise, are you going to do this on your own? Or are you going to use a franchise broker or a franchise consultant, right? And so now if you need a franchise broker or franchise consultant and you want someone to help find the franchise for you, that is something that, shameless plug here, that's something that me and my team can help with. So you can, schedule a call if you'd like, a free strategy call, and learn more about kind of how that works. But what we found is it's the most helpful part of the process for some of our clients, because it takes all of the frustration, all of the overwhelm out of it. Because typically the hardest part is just narrowing down to a good 3 to 5 really good franchises that meet your criteria and that meet the litmus test of the profitable franchise formula. And so, if you're doing this by yourself, well, you can still use the tools. What you're going to wind up doing is you're going to wind up looking through all the franchise websites, all the options, and you'll have more of an uphill battle if you do it on your own. Just so you know, there's nothing wrong with doing it on your own. There are many people that have went out there and done their research, bought franchises on their own, but it will take you longer. It will take you longer because it's just like there's no process. You have no blueprint at that point. You're just winging it, looking at websites. And so what happens is people reach out to us where they have been looking for a year, 2 years, 6 months. And the more they look, the more confused they get. And so that's one of the kind of downfalls of looking on your own. And then you'll also be more emotional about the decision, right? And so, yes, this is an emotional decision, but you want to utilize your logic as much as possible. And so when you're doing it on your own, you don't have anyone to talk you off the cliff or talk you off the ledge or support you when you're scared to pull the trigger, or when you're about to buy a stupid franchise that makes no sense in the world. Someone there to say, hey, I don't think that's going to be a good idea. As an example, one of the guys in our program, one of the ones I was talking about earlier, he went far down the road with a franchise that they had no franchisees, and it was in an industry, a home service industry that has a lot of really good franchises already that have a great track record, have a bunch of franchisees that are happy and profitable. And so my input was, why in the world, when there are 5 other really good franchises that have been proven, why would you go with the franchise that has 0 franchisees and you would be the first one? That's a disaster in the making. And so if he had not started working with us and he did it by himself, he probably would have pulled the trigger. Like, we were able to, I don't want to say talk him out of it, because like our objective is not to talk you out or into anything. It's to help you make an educated decision that is in alignment with your goals and puts you in the best position to succeed, reduce your risk, and avoid failure. And unfortunately, it's human nature for us to make very illogical decisions when we get excited about something. Nice. Dallas is a franchisee himself. He said it's helpful. I meet with the team on Monday. Awesome. Dallas is actually in our franchisee mastermind group too. He's looking to diversify his portfolio. So cool. So how does it work when working with like a franchise broker, consultant, et cetera? So the cool thing is that you have a very proven process. We talked about this. So what does that proven process looks like? It looks like, number one, the first thing you do is a special behavioral assessment. I'll explain our process and how we work with clients, just a part of it, which is you first do a behavioral assessment that's franchise specific, because right now you are wired a very specific way. You have directors, you have promoters, you have supporters, connectors, and then you have thinkers. So if you're a thinker, you're more of an analytical person, right? You want to see all the data, you want to know the numbers, you want to think it over, you want to do your research, right? And so that personality style of a thinker, you're going to be best fit for certain types of franchises. If you're a director, you're very type A, high D in terms of a disc profile. You like to be in charge. You like to lead teams. You make decisions quickly. And so there are franchises that are going to align with you being a director. And so that's the first thing that we do. We understand, okay, what's your wiring? What position would you best fit? Because it's not going to be everything. So that weeds down the process already. Then after that, we work with you on your net worth spreadsheet to get in sync with what your financial situation is, where is the available capital, et cetera, diving into the finances. So now we understand, okay, cool. We know how you're wired. So we know that all of these franchises probably don't make sense for you, right? All these might. And then now we know, hey, what's your financial situation? What's your access to capital? Where is that capital? And then already starting to devise a funding strategy and narrowing down to, hey, these are the franchises that you can actually afford. So look, at the end of the day, you may want a Lamborghini, right? But if you got a $50,000 budget for a vehicle, there's no point in looking at Lamborghinis unless you're like dream shopping, right? To just like get a feel for it. There's no point in wasting your time going out there for hours, test driving, looking, negotiating, when you know you can't afford a Lamborghini. Same thing with the franchise. If you can't afford a franchise that's a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 build out, there's no point in looking at those. So we get clear on your financial side of things. Then diving into your skills, your vision. What are your goals? What is your why? Some of the more intangible things. What does your lifestyle look like? Really painting that picture. And then take all of those things, all of those conversations and those meetings, and then present about 10 or so brands that meet your criteria. And, oh, by the way, that are available in your geographic area, because they're able to do territory checks. If you reach out to a franchisor, they're not going to tell you about territories until like the second or third call. So great. They want you to get sucked in and excited about the concept. And then now you're 2-3 calls deep, and now you find out your territory is not available. The only one that's available is the one that's 40 minutes away. And one of your most important goals was that you don't want to commute anymore. So now you just wasted your time on 2 to 3 calls. So you get to avoid wasting that time, because the brokers or consultants are going to do territory checks for you, right? And then so they're going to compile all of those things that you worked on, present 10 different brands, and then you're going to narrow it down to 3. So that's another mistake that people make when they're looking at franchises, is they're talking to too many or talking to too little. There's way too many great franchise options out there for you to only be in conversation doing due diligence with one franchise. Number one is that it puts too much pressure on the decision. At the end of the day, you get to the decision and you're like, is this franchise really right for me? Is this one I want to do? Maybe there's one out there better. And then now you've delayed your process. You're starting all over. It's harder to make a decision because there's so much pressure on this one, right? Whereas if you get to discovery day, down the finish line with about 2 or 3 franchises, then it's more about which one am I going to do, not do I have to do this one, right? So that's a really, really important part. And then outside of that, to do your thorough due diligence and make sure that it's the right franchise for you, and do franchisee validation calls and check how much money you can make, all those things, you really can't realistically do it with more than 3 brands at a time. It would be incredibly overwhelming, daunting. You'd get burnt out, etc. So what you can do is, as you weed out ones that don't meet your criteria, if you're looking at 3, you can always add another one to the rotation, if you need to. So I hope this was valuable for you guys. I got to run for this evening. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful, if this was valuable. Again, I'm going to be doing a live stream every single week. We did it on Wednesday because I'm not going to be available tomorrow, but typically we're going to do them on Thursdays at I think 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, I think is the plan overall. But let me know if this was valuable for you and what other topics that you may want to hear about or that you may want to listen to. What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing? Because I want to make content that's super valuable for you on these lives, and that's really helpful for you. So if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff, depending upon what platform you are watching at. Let us know if you're watching the replay, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.